Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Darth Geekonius with the Black Geeks. We're back here, episode 129. We're here to do our Game of Thrones wrap up and our Age of Ultron review as well. I'm joined by my other geeks here, Big Baba Rob and King Face. What's up, fellas?
Hello. Hi. Hello. Hello. How's your mama? How your mama and them? Hello.
This is crazy. Look, listen, because I'm looking at the camera, so I put my fingers towards the camera, and I'm always trying to orient.
Put your deuces.
Need to work on that. There you go.
You got it.
Yeah. You know, we got to interact.
Orient it.
We got to interact with our viewership and not just stare at ourselves in the little boxes in the corners. Actually, look at those people.
Look, I be trying to do that. I've been trying to check myself, but I like to look at my own face though. So.
The little boxes are interesting, though. They're just like floating and hovering and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we just got to talk to the people. That's all.
People, are you out there, people?
Does that work?
Are the people there?
Is this working?
Yes. Are you
No. The question is it working for you?
Yeah, you look like you're in pain, King Face. You all right?
Yeah, is it working for you?
You look like you're hurting.
I don't like staring at the green dot.
The green dot. Well, at least we don't have that smell-o-vision thing going on.
Oh God. Help us.
But so let's go ahead and get right into it, fellas. We want to make this short and sweet. So tonight was episode 4, season 5 of Game of Thrones, and we got a lot going on in this episode. A lot of changes for those who are still care about the fact that they're not following the books anymore. But tonight we see that Daenerys has gotten herself in a wee bit of trouble. What do you think about this episode tonight, King Face?
I don't know. Here's the thing, because the whole reason that I was talking to a couple of my friends earlier today and earlier this week. The reason why these shows have been working so far is because they stick to the content. This is an entire season not to the content. And it's crazy because my thought process is why rock the boat when it works? So when they go off the rails, it's cool and everything, but as long as we get to a point, and I have to ask myself, am I entertained? And I'm curious. But knowing what I know, I'm always thinking what I read was so much better. Why are you doing this? Because it serves no purpose. But since they are going off the rails, I'm still trying to figure out how all these things work. And it's not just me. I'm watching it with people who never read the books, and even they're saying things that I'm thinking, like, why are they so easily overpowering this super group of soldiers? It shouldn't go down like this. And I'm thinking, that's exactly what I was thinking. But whatever. I guess for shock value. Because these groups of soldiers shouldn't be taken out by these guys en masse, but I guess they're doing it to make it more suspenseful. And I'm mad that they killing off folks that shouldn't be killed off. I'm just really, so that just, I don't know how I'm feeling about that right now. So before I go into a tirade, you won't see me go into a tirade this entire season. I'll wait till the season's over. And if the season ends and I'm like, now that was great, then I won't say nothing. I don't see me going that route though, but I don't know. There's a lot of craziness in this show.
So you don't think you can still enjoy it knowing that they made such dramatic changes from the book?
Like I said before, it's not so much the changes from the book, it's whether or not I think you did better. See, if you're gonna make changes, that's fine and everything, but I need to be entertained. And if at the end of it, I'm thinking to myself, this is corny. You failed. You failed. If you make these changes, and at the end of the day, they don't produce, it's a failure. You failed. I mean, I hate to take it in terms, but like let's talk about a certain geek's favorite football team, the Deadskins. Right? They go in there and the general manager comes and he makes all these crazy changes. If you don't win, you failed. You failed. It's a failure. Everything you did, every change you made, everything that you went away from that made you good, if it doesn't work out, it's a failure. That's how I feel. And it's double for me because I read the books and the books were great. And the show was great because it was sticking to the books. So when you decide to go off the rails and go away from the material, you have you have to you have to be great or it's a failure. Simple.
Well, let's go ahead. Let's break it down to some of the things that aren't necessarily changes from the books per se, uh, but they are scenarios that came into the story, and they're really interesting stories, I think. So we already have the rise of the Sparrows now in King's Landing. And we see Lancel is back into the picture. Lancel, for if you know, for you those that remember, he was the Lannister cousin who Cersei had manipulated early on into helping King kill Robert. He was Robert's cupbearer. He now has returned as a religious zealot, if you will. They beat up the High Septim, and it looks like the Sparrows are gaining more and more power in King's Landing. At the same time, we have Queen Marjorie exerting her influence over Tommen, and he, looks like he's one of the star-crossed lovers or something, from a Hunger Games. He's like completely believing everything she says, and Cersei is now, a little nervous about what's going on. So we have that issue in King's Landing. And of course, at the same time, you have Daenerys is now dealing with the Harpies and finding that, it's not easy to rule people as easy as she thought it was. And at the same time, she now has her dragons tied up, and Drogon is still doing whatever he wants to do. So we still have a lot going on. And again, we don't want to focus too much on the changes. But if you were a viewer who's watching this for the first time and have no clue of the story, what are some of the things you would think as far as, what's your predictions, if you will, for what's going to go when goes on King's Landing with Cersei and the Sparrows and, Marjorie and things of that nature without
Well,
spoiling.
here's the thing. The best part about that is in King's Landing is pretty much sticking to the story with a few minor changes, and the minor changes don't bother me. They're sticking to the story in a sense. Like Cersei does what she's doing right now. She thins out the herd. She wants complete and utter, control of the group, and she makes changes. She does things without consulting anyone, and and in the end, it's just like she's inserting her influence. She's not nervous right now. Everything she's done, she's laying traps. That's what she's doing. She's disbanding the Tyrells because that's what she wants. Now we could argue whether or not that's the smartest move in the world, but she doesn't care. And I think the predictions or what's going to be fun is to see how it all plays out. Because I think a lot of people are seeing what she did with the Sparrows and thinking that she even realized what she did. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. That's going to be the fun part, to see whether or not it goes to her benefit or to her downfall. Who knows? And the whole thing with Tommen, that's just fun. That's just fun to watch. Little boy king who has to deal with either mommy or getting them draws. How do I do this? You see what I'm saying? And it's funny to watch him struggle because it's just fun.
Or as he tried to send his mother back to Castle Rock, I thought that was really funny as well. So what do you predict may happen in King's Landing? Again, without any spoilers.
Well, here's the thing. She opened Pandora's box, Cersei, because she did it to spite. She's not. I think what we're seeing, and I think what people have known for a while. She's not her father. She's a smart woman. She's dangerous, and that's never been in doubt. But the problem is, and you've seen it over the seasons, is that her father always told her, "You're too emotional, and you don't think straight sometimes," which is why you'll never be me. And she's not trying to hear that. And I think out of all her kids, we've always said we thought Tyrion was the most complete version of his father. which is ironic because he is his greatest shame, and Tyrion doesn't necessarily like his father. Obviously, he killed him. But you know,
Well, something that they not to cut you off, something that they didn't cover that was in the books. Um, there's a scene, and we can already see by how they're doing the show right now. They're not going to do this at all. But there's a scene in the book where Jamie is with the Lannister aunt, and she says, that Tyrion is actually his true heir. Cersei thinks
well,
she
you
is.
know that might happen. I mean, what you're discussing happened so late in the book.
Well, when you
It's not
when you look at what they're
necessarily
doing with Jamie right now, and it's
true.
it's highly unlikely they're going to go down that path.
They're going to play that game. Well, you know why? Because that's a whole part of a storyline that they just straight cut out the show. So I'm not going to say anything just in case they might do it later. But that's been said before though. So there's no point in
Yeah, and I always think that
going down. His father has already been established even within the show. Uh,
and I
but I
think
think what you're seeing is the validation of that right now with Cersei and King's Landing. Because right now she's in charge. She
right.
is the one making all the choices.
I think
And
one of the things that Tywin said that was really important though was the idea is that you know, he told Cersei early on, when she thought it was because she was a female, and Tywin said, "No, it's not because you're a female. It's because you're not as smart as you think you are." And that's going to play out expertly this season, which is why I'm looking forward to what's going to happen because,
you know what I'm looking forward to.
yeah, exactly. So it's going to be something. Uh, I will just say this: all of the things that Cersei has been doing is finally going to come to a head this season. So it's going to be really exciting to see that. So I'll leave it at that. Anything you want to say about what's going on with Danny or what's going on and
Well,
uh,
Danny is just a fun story. I had a person ask me, because they know I read the books and they're just curious. They asked me, why her story, why they were frustrated with her. And they asked me why is her story the way it is, and I had to tell them, I mean, listen, she is she may have came in with fire blazing and all that stuff and destroying stuff, but what people have to realize with Danny's story, she's young. She's new to this ruling thing, and she's got strong will. There's no question about that, but she don't know the first thing about rule. She only thing she has to fall on is her strength of will, and it's being tested because sometimes her strong will, she doesn't listen to her advisors. And what you're seeing, what's interesting to me about her storyline is that she's doing the very thing that she abhors, and she's following her father's footsteps. But she doesn't see that right now. And I think what's going to be interesting to see is, does she go all in and follow her father's footsteps? And when I say by following her father's footsteps, that's just making choices without listening to your counsel and seeing how all the bad it brings. Now, obviously, her father was insane and he did a lot of crazy stuff, and she may be coming from a good place, but she's doing the same things. Her counsel has been telling her for the past few shows, or even throughout the seasons, hey, listen, we should do it this way. And what does she always say? I'm the queen, and this is what we're going to do. And it's cool to have that kind of strength and conviction, but you're still a child. And these people who are advising you has played this game, and they've been around multiple kings. They've watched nations crumble, and they're giving you advice so you don't follow the same footsteps, and you're ignoring them. And now the same thing that Cersei is doing is happening to Dany. It's just crazy because we like Dany because she's not evil like Cersei. But at the same time, she's gonna have to learn the difference between Cersei and Dany. Is Dany's still young. Cersei's been this way. She's not changing. But Dany can still learn from her mistakes. The question is she going to in time? That's going to be the fun part to watch.
exactly. Well, we aren't going to go too hot and heavy into this discussion because we want to give as much time to the Avengers as well. We don't want to be here all night as we usually are, but just some final thoughts, at least from my point of view, and then I'll give you a chance to get some final thoughts on it. Again, there's a lot going on. As some of the people in our chat have been saying, they're not really feeling Game of Thrones, and I guess some people think it's dry. I personally do not think it is. I'm a little disappointed that they're not following the books as closely as they used to. But for what parts they are following, I can say that these first few episodes is just a warm up. There is a lot going on that is going to come to a head this season, and you're going to see some things that is probably going to be on the level of the Red Wedding in the sense of people are going to say, "Oh wow, I can't believe they did that." So
You know what I think real quick? I think I think you gave people too little credit. A lot of people are thinking this is dry because they're talking about the same people and they skipped an entire book. I honestly think that ultimately going to be a mistake. I think they should have went that route of the fourth book because I'm gonna tell you right now, when I first started reading the first book, I was like it was just on the heels of book three. Tyrion just killed his father. You don't know what's happening, and so when they started off with the storyline they started off with in book four, I was like, I don't want to hear the ish. What happened to Tyrion? But as I started reading the book, I forgot all about him. I forgot all about that stuff, and it introduced you to the wider world. And I think that would keep it fresh because you're introducing new characters, you're doing new things. And honestly, I think that probably would have been the best move. I honestly believe that because as you bring it forward, you see the wider story and it draws you in because you find that there's so much more than what's happening with a handful of people. You're seeing the blowback of all the moves that are being made by all these people. You're seeing the other side of, okay, well, these people made these choices and all this stuff has been happening. And now you're seeing things, you know, everybody's choices have consequences and you're seeing them. Everything that's happening, you're seeing them and you're seeing it from a different place. And be honest with you, book four was so awesome. It was one of my favorites. And it was rarely about any of the main characters. I think they should have did that this season. I honestly
well,
do.
they have a challenge ahead of themselves because they are actually covering both books 4 and 5 this season, and as we know, books 4 and 5 take place at the same time chronologically. So it's very challenging to cover both of those stories at one time. So we'll see how they end up, though. We'll see next week where we go. You know, Danny's lost one of her close advisors, so we think, and you
You
know,
think he's dead? Because he just kind of passed out. He didn't get his
we'll
throat.
see, we'll see, we'll see. And Grey
Man, they better
Worm.
not kill my man or Grey Worm. That was BS.
Yeah, so we'll see where that goes. So we're gonna go ahead and change gears. So for those of you who tuned in only for Game of Thrones commentary, we're not talking about Game of Thrones no more. That's it. Not until not until next week, I guess. And we're about to change gears to Age of Ultron, the Avengers 2, if you will. So the Black Geeks have seen this film, and I'm just going to just get right into it. Let's just start with Big Baba Rob. Big Baba Rob, haven't seen the movie. What's your thoughts?
So I think that it was awesome. It was an awesome movie. It was the
Oh
greatest
yeah.
movie I've ever seen.
I should open my mic when I talk. I'm sorry. I know.
Yeah,
I have
you
a bad
seen that. I
habit.
don't know why you keep doing that.
I know. I try to be courteous and mute my mic on my side, and I always do it manually through the little clicker thing and never on the camera. All right. Anyway, so Avengers. Avengers was a lovely love story. I tell you, I thought I was going to see an action flick, and I ended up seeing a really beautiful love story. That was quite the surprise. But no, it actually was. But okay, here's my impressions. I thought it was a good movie. It didn't quite blow me away like it did the last movie. I thought that the cinematics were great. I thought the story was actually very, very deep and better told than the first story. I felt that there was a lot more depth and context to this movie. I wasn't too impressed with the opening sequence. Some of the CG looked really, really pushed and forced. And also with the writing on this, I thought they tried too hard to be funny. I mean, what they were dealing with were fairly serious issues. I mean, we're talking really significant when you look at overall what they were trying to address with the overall movie, and it was funny. There was a lot of really funny light moments, but it just seemed like there were too many. Like they tried to force it. But I think that I think the character acting was pretty solid across the board. I think everyone did a great job in all the roles. I don't think that we saw anything that was too far outside of what we would expect from Marvel or the Avengers. And I have to say, the highlight for me, which is one of the big things I was looking forward to seeing in this movie, was the Hulk versus the Hulkbuster suit, and it definitely that whole sequence was stellar. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the concept that they came up with the Hulkbuster with the other kind of item relative to the Hulkbuster. I don't want to really spoil it for anybody, but it was a solid movie. I was definitely entertained at the end of it. I was not standing up asking for my money back. I thought it was a great movie. Just a few things here and there I could probably pick with, but overall it was solid.
Hmm. King Face.
Well, I thought the movie was awesome. I liked it better than the first one. I I say that because a lot of the times when you got a movie like the first one that was so good, you rarely ever going to top that, and you don't want to really say a movie isn't good anymore because it's not as good as the first one, especially when the first one was that good. But I think it did better. I think there were some things I didn't like, but it didn't ruin the movie for me. I mean, me and you talked about it, Econius. I thought that whole Black Widow Hulk thing was unnecessary to a point, as far as they took it anyway. To start off, that was cool because they did that in the comics and in some of the cartoons, and that wasn't necessarily off the rails, but it was unnecessary, I thought, to go further with that. But it wasn't like it ruined the movie. Like, I can't believe they did that. It killed the movie, not even remotely. CGI, that really bothers me too much, to be honest with you, unless it ruins the movie. It can ruin the movie if it's all that it was. Like, let's say that Ang Lee joint that they did with some green guy, that was a little bit too much. But other than that, uh, I thought the story was good. I thought everything was done well. I loved the vision. I like how they did that.
Yeah.
I was curious how it was going to go down. I was kind of worried, but they nailed it. They nailed it with the vision. I like the whole concept of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. I think that was done well. I love how they did Ultron. I love how they did Ultron. I think that was perfect, because it gives you a good representation of what Ultron is. This logically superior robot slash AI that thinks like that's not necessarily perfect in of itself, simply by his reactions and his raging and all that stuff. I think they did that perfectly because that's what Ultron is. As logical as he is, he's prone to human emotions, and I think that's awesome. And they kind of put that out there. The way they did it was awesome. I enjoyed that movie a lot. I can go and watch that again easily. Matter of
Um,
fact, I will.
I I'm confused on some levels, and I did see it again. King Face, you and I we seen it earlier in the week, and then I went again with the other rest of the geeks. This past weekend, so I saw it twice, and I actually walked away exactly the same as I did when you and I first saw it, and we posted a little quick, gag video, like a minute and some change. We posted it, and I don't know if there's some kind of generational thing. I don't know what's going on, but I'm looking at the critics who I think are completely out of their mind on this movie on many levels. But we walk out the theater the other day, and I ask people, and some people just like, eh. I'm like, and I'm wondering, is it just me? Because even right now, I'm watching the comments in our chat room, and Bison is saying that Avengers was too bloated, there were too many characters, too much weeding, and he could have chopped 20 minutes off the film. He also said Ultron isn't that menacing, and you know, Duke CT, he's saying it was too bloated and too many characters, not enough backstory, and I'm just like, maybe it's just me. It has to be just me, because I don't agree with
Hold on,
any.
hold on, hold
I
on.
don't agree
Here's the
with
thing.
any of this.
Hold on, here's the thing. Backstory for what? Every character that showed up in that show has appeared in the movies over the past 3, 4 years. What more backstory do you need? That's a waste of time. Like I don't need to know who Falcon is. We know that already. I don't need to know who Rhodey is. We know that already. What backstory? You mad because we don't have more backstory over the twins? You know why that is. If you don't be mad at the movie, be mad at Sony and Fox. But other than that, you know who Quicksilver and Wanda is, and you got enough. I mean, it's crazy because other than that, we don't need more backstory for the characters. So
I just don't know, and I'm not even upset as much as I thought I would be about the purity of the source material. In the sense that they didn't have Hank Pym involved in the creation of Ultron. I was really hoping that Whedon and crew would have gotten a little bit more creative with that, since they didn't put Hank as one of the original Avengers, and they're going to kind of do that with the Ant-Man, that he worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. or something when he was younger, and now Scott Lang. So I was hoping they would do something clever, like hint to the fact that Tony Stark was working on Ultron program based on some old stuff that was already developed, and then that way Hank Pym would still get some kind of credit. But outside of that, and of course the twins, they obviously, like you said, they can't say, oh, Magneto's their father and they're mutants. Obviously, they can't do that. So they had to just do it the best they could. And for what it's worth, they slipped in enough to give them at least credible, I don't know. Point was, I walked away both times, at the premiere and again seeing the second time, thinking the movie was nearly flawless. And I can't personally think of what I would have done differently outside of those canon tweaks that I really can't. I wouldn't have killed Quicksilver, that's for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't have did that neither. But
that's about it. I wouldn't have killed Quicksilver.
Did you really just do that? Did you really just drop that?
That's not a spoiler. The movie's been out, for like 2 weeks.
No, it hasn't been out.
It
came out 5 days.
It came out internationally like a week ago, and it came out this week in America.
It came out Thursday.
So
let's see.
In America, it came out Thursday.
Friday.
Don't matter. Saturday.
He did. No, don't matter. You already said it.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, real quick.
The point is, the movie.
Only thing I would have done differently. If I could have done anything differently, the only thing I would have done differently, if there was anything, I would have, because they already hinted at the new Avengers. I think that was the whole point of introducing some of those other characters, because I think they're going to move on from the original group and try to flesh out more people, which I think is a great idea. You don't want to just keep seeing the same old 5 people over and over again, because the Marvel Universe is bigger than that. And I think if the 2 things that I would have done differently, I would have did a nod to Black Panther. You went in Wakanda. Why can't you even see the guy's face? Number 2, I would have did a Carol Danvers. You could at least shown her. You could at least showed her face for 2 seconds, and had her say something, and that way you could do a nod to some of your future projects. Because Carol Danvers, how you gonna do a new Avengers without Miss Marvel? That's kind of dumb, and that would be dumb on Marvel's part if they plan on doing anything like that. And so I think you should at least show her, in the intro to her or something.
Can I comment just a second on Ultron himself? One thing that anybody who's a real fan of Blacklist, basically what I saw last night was either Ultron playing Reddington or Reddington playing Ultron. I'm not exactly sure which character came first, but I swear Ultron was like just straight up Reddington from Blacklist, and David Spader did a fabulous job. I know that they were trying to make Ultron really just cool and bad and whatnot. I was kind of surprised that I thought he was almost too human. I thought they took it a little bit too far personally.
But see, if you read if that's the problem. Ultron was what Ultron was, and I think from a cinematic view, that was perfect, because Ultron is not a regular robot. He is not all nuts and bolts. The whole point of Ultron is he puts on like when you read a comment, he's always saying things. He speaks as if he's a robot to a point, as far as his mission or why he does what he does. It's all logic there. Once you break outside of that, he says and does things that's all about being human, and that's always been the biggest misconception about Ultron is he's as human as the rest of the bad guys. He just says things differently. But when it comes down to it, the only reason why he gets beat because he always either rage, especially when it comes to rage, he always
Mhm.
does things that's not logical. And it's like, if he ever gets rid of that part of him, he'll kill everyone. But he
Well, here,
doesn't because he's not a regular robot. He's human. He's
well, here,
human in his thoughts.
well, here's the thing I want to say about Ultron, and I also want to address some more of the comments that are in the chat. What I think is, and when you look at Whedon's take on Ultron, obviously Ultron's a much more dynamic, menacing, dangerous foe in the comics. They really should have dealt with Ultron over a course of a couple of movies. But since they went this way, I think it's kind of brilliant how he did this version of Ultron in the sense that if you look at Ultron in the comics and how menacing he is, he's based off of Hank Pym, who Hank Pym as a character has a real dark side to him. So whereas this version of Ultron is based off Iron Man, and in Iron Man, he's snarky. He makes, and they even played to that when he was like, he got me by 1 second. So I kind of think that he was actually being brilliant by trying to make Ultron more like Tony Stark than trying to, follow the Ultron in the comics, who's Hank Pym creation. That's the way I read it. So I kind of liked the lighthearted Ultron, if you will. I thought it was pretty funny. But just to cover some of the comments, Biden said these movies are starting to get too predictable. Guardians was good because it stepped outside the box. And, this is city lift off the thing has been done. Let's look. I don't want to get into no big debate, but aren't all these movies kind of predictable?
I'm curious how the
Aren't
Guardians of the Galaxy steps outside the box.
aren't comics in general kind of like the same main themes over and over for the last 50 years or so? I
Right.
mean, what different thing? Guardians is different than the Avengers because they're different than the Avengers. They're in space. There's a whole other dynamic of what's going on in space versus the Avengers. I don't know what we're looking for here. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think a lot of these comments that are knocking down Avengers to a peg or whatever are based on this idea that there's supposed to be more to this. The reality is it really is just this. The Captain America throwing a shield, Hulk smashing, arrows, shooting from Hawkeye, Iron Man doing Iron Man. There isn't much more to this until you
But you know
start
what?
throwing in other Avengers.
No. I'm gonna disagree with you there, and I think part of what they're probably seeing is they want another storyline because this movie was fun to me. It was fun, but I think it can be better when they actually start doing the storylines. This wasn't a storyline. This was just a setup, and I think people need to understand that this movie was awesome, but it was a setup. It was a setup to further things. I kept nudging the Geekonies the whole time the movie was going because I seen where I seen things like, oh, they're gonna do this soon. Oh, they're gonna do that. Oh, I can't wait till they do this because this movie more or less was a setup to more to come. And I think for example, if they do the Civil War, that should be extraordinarily entertaining because the concept is like a regular debate. I mean, when Civil War came out, people were debating like that stuff was real. Like, I wouldn't do that. And people were actually getting into theological debates or sociological debates, talking about something. This is just wrong. This is just wrong, and it was real. And I think that's what's coming up. I think that's probably what more people. There are more to the comics than just throw the damn shield. These characters have more to them than just their
Well, what
superpowers.
I'm saying as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point in the storytelling, I don't know what we were expecting. They still have a lot to do. They still got to throw in Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and there's still a lot. We still got two gems that haven't been discovered. The Soul Gem and the Time Gem is still floating out there. So it's kind of like, and they're already sunsetting these characters. They're setting it up to let you know, look, at a certain point we're gonna have a new set of Avengers. I don't know. I just think as a movie, I think they fired on every cylinder, and the reason why I believe this movie is better than the first one is because the first one had to deal with a lot of build up to get you used to them being as a team, almost like an origin story. Whereas the second one, they were able to just get right into it, and they were able to draw in some stuff from Agent Carter. They were able to draw in some stuff from Agents of Shield to tie the TV in the cinematic universes, and it gives you an idea of where they're going for the future when they get into Civil War and Infinity War. Because at that point, they're going to have Daredevil, which is awesome. They're going to already have Iron Fist and the Defenders and stuff like that. So this thing is just building and building, and this just,
Caveat.
Yeah.
Caveat. I hope, I pray that the Luke Cage and Iron Fist is as good as Daredevil. If they do, Marvel for the win. Game over. There's nothing else to say because Daredevil is awesome. And if that is an indication of where they're going, I can't wait for the Luke Cage. I've been screaming Luke Cage show for years, and if they could do it right, it's going to be awesome.
They've actually been filming Luke Cage. They've been working on Luke Cage longer than Daredevil, which to me, if what we got out of Daredevil, and the actor that they picked for Luke Cage, I liked him in the Halo series. The Xbox had its own little Halo TV show, and he's pretty good in that. So I think overall Marvel has a way to go, but I'm just gonna say final thoughts. I thought this movie was really good. I don't think anyone disagreeing that the movie was good.
No, it was a good movie. It was definitely a good movie.
I think we're debating on the nuance, how we feel about the twins, how we feel about Ultron, what they could have did better.
So I'm gonna ask Bobby Rob. Since Robert, Geekonius didn't want to ask. He didn't want to answer my question. He was ducking it. Which Quicksilver did you like better?
I'm not getting into that.
Which Quicksilver did you like better?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because most of my comic book knowledge is based upon growing up watching, the X-Men series, the cartoon series. So, I'm so used to the Pietro being just, sarcastic and arrogant and witty. This guy was way more down to earth and very connected with his sister. So my view is slightly tinted. I love the reality of this one. I felt they created a very strong backstory for them that made them a little bit darker and a little bit tougher. Excuse me. So I'm going. Oh, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one. If I had to pick one, I think I'm going to have to go with this one over the last one. I think the last one was a little bit too loose and too comic-y. That this guy, the picture they did in this one was a little bit more real and fits in to the Marvel storyline that they've created with the last two Avengers movie.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I like this guy.
Ooh, that's two for the Marvel's Quicksilver.
Yeah, I enjoyed his character. It's bad that it ended up the way it did, but I like this dude. They need to bring him back some kind of way, since we already know his dad.
I'm trying to figure out how they're gonna do that. It's just
Bison, Duke, CT, y'all want to weigh in on which Quicksilver? Since you're in the chat.
Hey, while they're weighing in, let's not forget Coulson was in Tahiti for a long time, so they took Pietro with them on the boat. So hey, there's always Tahiti.
Rob was screaming Tahiti at the movie theater tonight.
We've always got Tahiti, people. It's not too late.
So
and this is the comic universe, so
the same universe.
The crazy part is that can work because of the backstory between Quicksilver and the Inhumans, since he has a relationship with them. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. I just don't see how they're gonna make it work, but it's possible.
And they still have to draw the Inhumans in. into the storyline because they already brought them out in Agents of Shield, and there's an Inhumans movie still coming.
Hey, let's rate the movie. We should rate the movies so we we can tell people what we think it. We want to do it on a scale of Cosmic Afros again, or what you want to do it?
We still ain't got our own.
Uh-oh. Shots fired. Bison likes the X-Men Quicksilver. He gave it to Fox.
There it is.
I think Bison liked to stir the pot. That's what I think.
No, Bison's real, bro.
I think he just likes stirring the pot.
No, he doesn't. He likes to call it like it
We gotta
is.
kick him out the kitchen for right now.
No, but you know what? Honestly, because here's the thing about that with the Fox version, they said it in the movie when Logan was like, we got to go. I know somebody that we can go to. He's like, in the future, he's more of a hard ass, but right now he should be kind of lighthearted, which makes sense. So I think what Giconi has said, he didn't really give an answer. But that scene when they were rescuing Magneto was just awesome. It was such a good scene that I think that by itself gives it credibility. Let's also keep in mind that Quicksilver didn't have a large part in X-Men as opposed to he did in Avengers. Even though we could probably say they probably had the same amount of screen time. So
No, not even close to it. It had the same amount of screen time. I don't think so. Anyway.
it is
No,
close.
it didn't feel like it anyway.
That's why I said it didn't feel like it, but if you really think about it, it's about the same amount of screen time. But it's just Quicksilver's in the Marvel joint was more was spread out, whereas the X-Men was more concentrated to a specific.
Yeah, that one scene. That's really.
Well, no, I mean I'm just saying FaceTime. Damn the scene, just FaceTime in general. It was only a small part of the movie, whereas this movie, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch played a larger part of the plot. Quicksilver didn't play a large part of the plot in X-Men. Did not even remotely. But they had about the same amount of screen time, is what I'm saying. But all that being said, I think I like the Marvel version, but only by a hair, and only because, like Rob said, he fit more of what Pedro should be in the comics. But I actually like the Fox's version. I like what they did. I like how they did it, and that one scene was fire. They had a similar scene in the Marvel one, but it was not nearly as good as the scene that they did in Fox's.
Hey, Face, Geekonies, I know that we're tight on time. I know we're kind of over the time limit. Can I ask Face one important question about the movie, if you don't mind? Face, could you explain to people like how they explain Scarlet Witch's power? You saw her throwing a lot of red, and I don't think a lot of folks will really understand what exactly her power is, because I think my understanding is that it's technically hexing, but they kind of like they I don't know, they expanded it into a force. Could you kind of explain like what Scarlet Witch was about?
Even in the comics, Scarlet Witch is a beast, and her powers fluctuate. Even in the comic books, she does have hex powers, and it's always been red. So even in when they show her do her powers, it's always like a red hue. So that's pretty much a homage to the comic books. But the reality is, Scarlet Witch goes from just throwing hex powers, throwing out a little bit of sparks from here and there. She turns out to be like one of the strongest mutants in the world. She like has reality warping powers. She could warp the entire realities. And when they kind of explain it in the movie about all the things she could do, I mean, she's not the greatest she's not the greatest telepath, but she can do stuff because her powers, even though she's a mutant, her powers is based more in magic. And in the comic books, their backstory gets kind of tweaked every now and again. And one of the ones that they stuck with was, she was a mutant, and she ended up coming across one of those magical beings like Shutu or whatever, and soaked in some of his powers. So she has a lot of what they call it, chaos magic, where she could just unravel stuff. That's kind of what they do. So she can throw powers out in a force, but she's more almost magical, more than just energy power or anything like that. So she's just capable of a lot of things through that way. She's an interesting character. She's very strong and can do a lot. So she's just she is kind of unstable, and they kind of show that a little bit here, where she went after Ultron instead of trying to keep the thing safe. That's always been her thing.
Got you. Yeah. Thanks for breaking that down because I didn't know a whole lot about Scarlet Witch, so I wasn't exactly sure like what she was doing. Like I said, I had just a basic understanding from old comics, but I appreciate the breakdown. It makes it clear.
I have one question. I think this is a good question as far as a looking forward question. Um, it looks like they're setting up the new Avengers to basically be Black Panther, Falcon, War Machine, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man.
Black Panther's not going to be a part of that team.
You don't think so?
You can't have 3 black folks on this power team. Sorry, it's not going to work.
Oh, yeah. They might invoke the Walking Dead clause.
Yes.
Yeah. But if they didn't invoke the Walking Dead clause, it looks like they're gonna have.
I'm sorry, don't do that. Don't even play like that. That's why cats are getting shot in the street because we're getting too liberal.
Then you still have Wanda, Scarlet Witch, maybe Quicksilver if Rob's Tahiti thing plays out. You know what, Rob? That is sounding more and more plausible by the minute.
Doesn't it though?
But you know what I think they're really gonna do? We still have the Soul and Time Gem floating out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Face. Either one of those gems could bring him back.
Yeah, Soul Gem could sorta, and a Time Gem.
If they go back in time and stop him from dying.
Yeah, but how you gonna play that? That's what I'm saying. How you gonna do that?
How they gonna do the Time Gem in general? That's what the one I'm waiting for to see what story they gonna play around that.
I don't. Even in the comics, the Time Gem didn't get that much airtime. You just knew it existed. But people did use the Mind Gem. People actually used the Power Gem. You saw it actively being used. The Reality Gem, that was actively being used. The Soul Gem, obviously actively being used. The Time Gem, I have to go back and reread stuff. I don't recall it ever being overly used.
Because when you start screwing with the Time Gem, you start getting too much into that DC Flash going back in time stuff.
Going back in time.
And it starts getting nice and weird.
Yeah.
You start doing that X-Men Days of Future Past.
But you can. I guess in my mind, I could come up with a couple ways you could play it to where you could do it where it's not too crazy. And if you do, it could work. Because right then I thought Hawkeye was going to die.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to die, and it would have made sense if he would have died and came back. That would make sense because that's that whole thing with Scarlet Witch and doing whatever she does, and all of a sudden Hawkeye mysteriously just comes back to life. That seemed like that was something that could have happened.
I like the fact they finally let the cat out the bag though about the gems. People have been speculating for a while about the Aether and the staff.
Well, I think once they did the Power Gem, I think it became obvious.
Yeah.
And plus, it's not like they let the cat out the bag now, because if you remember Guardians of the Galaxy, the Collector said the exact same thing. He said 6 gems spread out through time.
Well, no, not that. We all knew that there was the gems, but there was a lot of debate online. Like, for instance, when you look at the Aether from Thor: The Dark World, it was just like a liquid. It wasn't until the Power Gem, when you found out that you open it up and the gem was in there, that people started saying, okay, the Tesseract is definitely one. The Mind, the only one that you could tell for a fact had to be one of the gems was the Mind Gem, because it was already shaped like something that might be holding a gem, a stone.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that, Bison brought a quick question. I want to give everybody a chance. And he wanted to say, he's a question. Is it just him, or was Thor underutilized? And then he also asked that he said there's talk that the Black Panther will take Reed Richards' role in Captain America: Civil War. I'm not really up to speed on the whole Civil War storyline, so
I wouldn't be a fan of
your face.
I wouldn't be a fan of that. But because they don't have Reed Richards, what else you gonna do? You need a third.
We need to start the petition.
And no, I mean, no.
Fox need to eat some humble pie.
Yeah, because actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it would make sense, because when they have They always have this thing like some of the 7 of the smartest men in Marvel, and Black Panther is one of them. So it could be any one of those 7, and it will make sense. Hank Pym, Tony Stark, Reed Richards, Black Panther, Bruce Banner. They're all within that realm on top of Doom.
I feel like we need to have just another show just to go into it because there's so much to go into.
Yes. TikTok. Yes.
Yeah, because we are getting like 30 minutes over what we had planned to do. And you know, because now we're getting into Civil War and stuff like that, and you got Ant-Man coming up. So what they're gonna do with Hank Pym is gonna be a big deal in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that being said, I want to thank everybody for being on. I want to thank Bison, Duke CT for joining us in the chat. Of course, my fellow geeks. So outside of that, we'll see y'all next time. Live long and prosper.
I guess he's going to end it now. He's going to end it now. He's going to end the show.
I'm going to push this button.
He's going to end the show.
Don't push the button!
Push the button, damn it.
I'm pushing the button.
Push the button.
Button!
Push the button.
I'm pushing it. Good night, everybody.